so I'll dive right in. I've just come from Julian's session in like the main hall, and we built a techno track, and so I'm very hyped up. Yeah. So we get hyped up in this room as well. Do you guys like a bit of Ramones? Like, hey, ho.
Let's go.
Hey, ho.
Let's go.
Hey, ho.
Let's go.
Thank you. All right. There's like an RMIT thing happening there about take charge of your career, so we want them to hear how fun we are. So they all come work for us. All right, so podcasting is a B-tier superpower. Does anyone know this guy? I want to say I've forgotten his name, but this is like from a while ago. Seattle has its very own vigilante superhero who like does citizen arrests and help little old ladies cross the street, and it's fantastic. So I'm not saying I am him. I'm just like him. And we all know what a podcast is these days as well. So it's not like 10 years ago and I had to tell people, yeah, I'm into podcasts. They're like radio, but less full of ads, which is also not true anymore. And less full of crazy people and political talkback radio, but it's also not true anymore. So yeah, podcasting, we all know what it is, the good, the bad, the ugly of it. So the good news is I've given a version of this talk before to people in the Waddle Fellowship, which is like an environmental leadership program at the University of Melbourne, but none of you had to pay for a University of Melbourne degree to be here. So even if it's shit, you're ahead. This is good. All right, so here's the buried lead. This is going to come up in about 10 minutes' time. But how a ragtag group of podcasters took on a $1 trillion company, the California Fruit Company. All right. And a quick disclaimer about me, and also it's a smaller group, but at least I don't have to tell each and every person this individually. My childhood was spent going from Auckland to Seattle via LAX. So leaving America, landing in New Zealand, America, New Zealand. I was doing that twice a year. So I was doing 2 summers a year as a kid from 2 till 12, which is 5.1 tons of CO2. So I'm no good at math, but I don't know, how big's an elephant? Like 50 tons just for me, just for those flights? But I was a kid, right? It's not my fault, but sustainability was always a thing for me. Like, I didn't want to think about it, probably for this reason. I felt like my carbon footprint was a bit like Bigfoot, I guess. So then I moved to China, and this was my existence for these 2 years. And here's a little prelude for Patty's talk in Green Brain Room 2 on how to stop the air from killing you. Well, that's what I was breathing every day. We had 5 days of blue sky in the 2 years I was there. And that honestly was it. That was an average day. Where I was at in Suzhou, Jiangsu, which is like the Ohio of China. It's like the Rust Belt. It's pretty grim. But then I got to Australia. Boundless plains to share, beautiful blue skies, and there's no problems in Australia. We're definitely not one of the biggest fossil fuel exporters in the world, bigger than UAE by far, 3rd largest exporter of fossil fuels in the world. Of course, this is no news to any of you, but it was news to me, because I got here and I was like, I can breathe without it hurting. The water is clear, the rivers aren't full of dead fish. And I was like, everything's good. Then I found out about those facts, how Australia is actually a petro-state, how we're a huge exporter of fossil fuels, how there is this big problem that I'd already been living with, like not just the near-term future of a changing climate, but I'd lived in a post-environmentally destroyed place for 2 years of my life. I'd watched 4- and 5-year-old kids that I was teaching coughing up black phlegm. And it was just this horrific existence. And I was like, well, what am I going to do about it? I'm no climate campaigner. I'm a kid with a 50-ton carbon footprint. So what can I do? I don't feel like every time I think about going to be part of some group and be like, well, how sustainable are you? And I'm like, it's like, you must be this tall to ride. You must be this sustainable to actually kind of be a part of this. And of course, that wasn't the reality, but it's how I felt. I didn't know where to start. So I wanted to hear a podcast from people who actually were doing this on a day-to-day level, your street-level superheroes of sustainability. I could find a million interviews with Al Gore all saying the same thing every time, or Bob Brown. I couldn't find, these are names that won't mean anything maybe to any of you guys. Violet Coco is an activist who's been arrested about 8 times. I interviewed her maybe after her first arrest, and every time I open The Guardian and it's like, is it today that this person that I've met that is like a living, breathing human being to me has been put in jail for 40 years? Maybe. I found a green field, which in 2018, when this was my reality, it was hard to find a podcast then, let alone now. There was already a podcast for everything, right? There was already tens of thousands of podcasts. And why I wanted a podcast is I was a homeschooled only child who grew up with headphones on, like 50, 60, 70 hours a week of audio. I would have those books on tape, and I knew how many hours I was getting through because I used to have these books of cassette tapes. So it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on either side, and I would finish one of those a week, and they were each like 2 hours long, so it's like 48 hours of content in one of those. So I can tell you a lot about propagandistic American history and how George Washington really did feel bad when he told his parents he chopped down a cherry tree. That's just something I know very well. So I found a gap, and I started this podcast, Climactic, because I wanted to tell the stories about how Australia, while being the lucky country, while having an amazingly high standard of living, while enjoying sunny beaches and blue skies, was living and contributing to climactic times. You can see this might have even been pre-Canva, but this was my very early bit of graphic design. I later got other people to do this stuff for me, but I started that. And we interviewed amazing people. There's going to be names in here I don't even remember. I remember some of my earliest co-hosts. So I would interview someone. I'd be like, hey, you, Bronwyn Gresham, you're with Psychology for a Safe Climate. Tell me about that. And I'd just be curious. And we'd have a chat for an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. I would then edit it down to about 30 minutes. And I learned by doing how to do this stuff. Georgia Scheel, who worked since then at VOW, if you know the cell-based meat company, which is real meat, but it's not grown from cows. Vat-based meat, pretty cool. Maxine Baisley, who I met at, does anyone know the New Joneses? Tamara DiMattina, any of this? No. Met her at the Ballarat Garden Show when she was with this group called the New Joneses that was touring around a tiny house, had a Tesla Powerwall, this is like 2018, had a Tesla Model X parked at the front, and they were like saying, hey, you want to keep up with the Joneses? You want to keep up with what your neighbors are doing? You want to be trendy and cool? Here's what people are doing now. Sort of showed what was possible. And she was presenting for them and had a background in radio and ended up, does anyone know who this is? Any Ozpol tragics? This is, Dr. Richard DiNatale when he was leader of the Greens. This is in his office on Collins Street, and I was like, oh, shit, it's getting somewhere. I've been able to sit down and talk to a leader of a federal party in their office. And it was just, I went from being like, I don't want to go to a group because I'm going to feel self-conscious, to being like, hey, I'm going to grab an hour of your time and I'm going to ask you questions, but I'm not the expert. Just ask you questions because I'm curious. Other folks as well. Does anyone know Toby Kent? He was Melbourne City's first Chief Resiliency Officer. This was a position funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and this was at a screening during the Transitions Film Festival. So I was just getting opportunities to speak and do this kind of thing because people were like, oh, you'd be good at it because you have a podcast. And it's like, haha, I do this in my bedroom. You have no idea how little I know how to do this stuff, or I have no background in it, but it's what I want to do. And people think that if you're doing something, you know how to do it, which I guess works out sometimes, but it went on from there. This is Climate Reality in 2018 in Brisbane. Does anyone know Climate Reality? The Al Gore group. This is what he went on to do after Inconvenient Truth, training people in how to give basically the seminar, the presentation that Al Gore gave during the Inconvenient Truth film. So I didn't get the photo I should have, which is Al Gore standing right there with my logo right behind him. Because I tried, but he's so tall, you couldn't see my logo through Al Gore standing there with it right behind him. It grew. We were doing dynamic ad insertion. I would just say, hey, climate community, you got anything you want to promote? Got any job ads? Got any events coming up? We will say, hey, the New South Wales events, we will target just the downloads in New South Wales, and they'll hear your ad. We could get really granular with that. I was working at a podcast hosting company at the time where this is what we did. And I said, hey guys, I've got a climate podcast that's now a network. A bunch of other people decided to jump on as well. I offered them free hosting. And I was like, hey, how about you give me free unlimited hosting and ad insertions, and I eat the dog food. Whenever you want to do something new, try out a new feature or something, test it out on me. I'll be our in-house network. And they were like, yep, sounds good. We took part in Sustainable Living Festival. We did things. We hosted University of Melbourne shows with the idea that the Postgraduate Environment Network, which is students, of course, that change every year, if they wanted a podcast, well, it would be kind of good to have a third party kind of hold the keys for them and keep that. So when the students changed over, they would have someone to go ask for help, or how does this work? And it wouldn't have to be trying to contact a student who's now in Cambodia, you know. And then I went on to work on other shows. So A Positive Climate, which is 2 Arena alumni doing sort of, clean tech, startup and scale-up founder interviews. After the Shofar, the Jewish Climate Network, we had Dr. Carl, we had Norman Swan on there. Facilitate This, which is all about how to facilitate difficult conversations and how to get good at the art of that. Under One Blue Roof, which was someone from that University of Melbourne fellowship. This is the project she did. She did this podcast. She did 6 episodes of it. The last episode was with Regen Melbourne, and she did that very strategically because she really wanted to work at Regen Melbourne. So she's like, hey, CEO, I'd love to have you on and ask you some questions. Oh, you think I'm really prepared and a really good speaker? Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, sure, I'll accept the job offer you just gave me. And clever, really clever. And this is what I'm working on right now. This is, has anyone ever heard, what's a shortening of Victoria? You've heard of Vic, Vicky, Tori. This is Talkie. Talkie and her sister Charlie. Charlie works at ClimateWorks, environmental lawyer. Talkie, your sister, is still in Manchester, is brand new to anything climate, but she's had a beautiful little girl who's about 7 months old, and now she's freaked out about climate change. So Charlie is just sort of helping Talkie through what the hell's going on and how to function with having a young kid and all of this climate stuff being new to you. So working on some fun stuff. So what I wanted to talk about is, all that stuff is pretty normal. It's like, okay, if you love podcasting and you want to start a podcast, you'll probably start working on podcasts and things will happen. But what if you treated podcasting as activism? And what if you tried to do something bigger? Go outside your network, make a real potential difference and a change. Does anyone know, what's the power of the Dewey Decimal System? And who knows what the Dewey Decimal System is? Any bibliophiles? Thank you, Sam. When you walk into a library and you want a book, how the flip do you know where it is? Thank you, Dewey Decimal System. So, pop quiz, Apple, who basically are the Dewey Decimal System for podcasting, they came up with the original, I got the right word for it, which is escaping me, the nomenclature, the categorization system, the schema, the map. They came up with it back in 2008, when they had podcasts for the iPod, and they were sort of the originator of the space. And they just had literally a guy be like, here's the things that exist and maybe will exist. But they added a new category to Apple Podcasts, making it possible to find all of these shows really easily. They added that in 2019, the same year as Black Summer. What do you think was really important for people to know about, become engaged with, become those two things, to know about and engage with? What's really important to people's survival and thriving and flourishing and I already said survival, but survival, double survival. It's true crime. They added a true crime category in 2019, and then a few years later, there were 40,000 true crime shows. Huge. I'm so happy. Hundreds of thousands, nay, millions of people are still alive today because of true crime. Huge. If we could get Apple to do the same and create a climate category, of which there are none, and there is no good way to categorize climate content, maybe more people would find it and they would take action and we would save millions of lives. Apple, they're pretty green. They're pretty switched on, right? This should be an easy win. I asked. So I was working in the industry. I had contact details for the Apple podcast content for team for APAC. And I said, hey guys, can we do this? And they said, yeah, sounds like a good idea, but it's no priority for us. There is absolutely no interest in this, and it's a pretty big deal to change our categories. And I'm like, really? How much work was it to add true crime? And they're like, oh, so much. Just so, oh no. So we decided, a ragtag group of friends and I, to put together a pressure campaign. And those friends were Sean Marsh, who's creative strategy director for Climate 200, who got all the teals elected or helped. He also worked at Alpha Whale, which worked on Amber back in the day, which is a weird crossover. And my friend Eve Brennan, who's a cartoonist. And we decided, you can find personal finance shows really easily. There's a place. You can find politics and comedy and well-being even. There's a subcategory for well-being. But finding the climate stuff was really bloody hard. So we got a bunch of people who had shows to support the campaign. They sent in voicemails. We had a podcast going. We had 1,300 podcasters and listeners support a climate category. We got New York Times covered it, ABC, we got a few interviews on there. And then we launched this about 3 months before Earth Day 2020. And we looked at everything they announced. Apple's commitment to water runs deep. Daisy, the recycling robot, was going to turn your phone into a new one, and so you could pay another $1,400 for it. They went to USB-C in Europe, not in America at this stage. There was one thing missing. They didn't make it any easier to find climate content. It's still buried deep in the library. So what we did next is we got iHeartRadio to pick it up, and they were the first major podcast platform to have a climate category, which is pretty cool. But hey, we didn't get Apple. We did get a climate award category in the Australian Podcast Awards, which to people in the space is a big deal. And you're going through it, it's like, yeah, friends of ours in the campaign, yep. And they're just like, thank you. We had no attention before this. We were just screaming into the void, quite literally. But did we get Apple? Climate 0 out of 0. And this is you can find design arts, you can find arts about food easier than you can find climate content. You can find a million different types of business content, subcategories out the wazoo. You still can't find climate on Apple. But they heard us. And right now on Apple Podcasts, there is a climate collection. There's a curation of shows that they are highlighting. They just haven't added it into the Dewey Decimal System yet. The word I got back from the team, the Apple team for APAC, the Apple podcast team, one gave me a call, and they said, look, we agree. We like this campaign. We're going to do it eventually, but when we do it, we will not acknowledge this campaign because we do not want to be seen as susceptible to outside influence. What we do is up to us. Kind of thanks, but fuck you, a little bit. But hey, this exists. It's now easier for people to find Hank Green content, thank God. We now have a climate award category in the Australian Podcast Awards. We now have, for those of you just coming in, a few friends and I did a campaign saying, hey, Apple, if you're going to add a true crime category to Apple Podcasts in 2019 and spawn 40,000 true crime podcasts, how about a climate one? And we got iHeartRadio to add a climate category, but no Apple to this day. But hey, I'm pretty happy with what we did. So even though there's no climate category, making a podcast about climate or anything else is easier now than ever. But why make one, or any podcast for that matter, Now, Georgia, I've got till 10 past, so I've got 4 minutes left. So questions might be just, no questions, just commendations. That seems. But why make one or any? Well, here's a few reasons not to. I don't like talking to people. Well, that's hard to overcome. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe don't start a podcast. I don't find what people have to say. Oh, I'm not that interested in others. I have no sense of curiosity. I can't hold a conversation. Again, maybe not for you. This one is literally the most Australian thing ever, and I've heard it from people. It's like, I'm not tall poppy, or like, I'm not interesting. I'm like, well, have you tried to be? Have you given it a crack? Come on, back yourself in. All the Aussieisms I can throw at it. It won't sound good. I won't sound good. People will hate it. My life will be over. Well, catastrophizing much. What's an hour of time worth to you? What would you do with an hour of time from someone you admire? So I think largely this has died off, right? The idea of like asking someone to get a coffee. Like everyone's just busy now. But it used to be a thing, and I used to absolutely abuse that and would take it up, and office hours and everything from lecturers. If you ask someone for an hour of their time today, it's a hard yes. It's hard to get a yes. If you say, hey, I've got a podcast. I've got an audience. Would you like to be featured? Can I get an hour of your time to speak to that audience? That's a much easier yes. You're valuing their time by saying there's something back for you. It's reciprocal. You're not offering nothing for it. You're not asking them for a favor. You're offering them something. And if you got that time, are you able to make that hour of value into half an hour of value for an audience? And the reason I ask is, as you'd have heard while I'm speaking, there is a lot of pauses, maybe an or two or three. If you listen to just the audio from a conversation, all of that stuff gets heightened. It's turned up to 11. You notice it so much more. So just that simple act of just like varnishing it, polishing it. If you aren't in the room or in person with someone, all the subtleties of body language are gone. You hear it so much more in audio than you do in person. You forgive so much. So just a simple bit of an edit, and the tools have never been better. Honestly, you can almost push a button and it does it all for you, which is terrifying as someone who edits podcasts. But it's never been easier. If you can do that, and you can, because the tools have never been easier, the potential audience has never been bigger. No one has asked me in the last 5 years, what's a podcast? That used to be my barrier, right? And that's gone. Interest in and openness to independent voices is now massive. So, do you guys have any ideas? Is there anyone you'd really like an hour of time with that would benefit you a lot? And if it would benefit you, it would probably benefit someone else as well, right? Pretty simple. And there's the shameless plug for my freelance editing I do. There we go, 1 minute to 10 past. Thank you. I didn't even need to wear my lucky beanie, but I did have it on me, so.